Hi everyone, it's Gary here, and warm welcome to us here on the Fourth Official here on YouTube as we celebrate our 100th video live on the Fourth Official YouTube channel. And it's a good one today. Joining me from the United Road podcast is my guest for today. It is Callum Stone. How are we, Callum?
How do? How's things?
Very well. Obviously, we've got you on and build up to the big game on Thursday night as Rangers come down to Old Trafford for the Europa League match against Manchester United. And as Peter Drury once said quite famously back in 2008, Manchester, brace yourself, the Rangers are coming. And certainly, given the kind of current form, I think, of both sides, I think Thursday night's game is one that's got quite a bit of interest, given the fact that Man United at Old Trafford this season have flattered to deceive, and Rangers on the road have been pretty awful domestically, although we've managed to pick up a couple of decent results on the road in the Europa League. So it's a game that I think both managers will be looking at it in terms of one that bit of a free hit from a Rangers perspective, but for Ruben Amorim, it's one where really needs to be getting a result.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think looking at the table across the Europa League, I think Rangers have done really well. Obviously, they picked up some good results. I mean, obviously, I know they played Tottenham as well, which is obviously really good Premier League side. Getting a draw against them is obviously really good for Rangers. I think the weird thing for us is Man United started so poorly in the Europa League. Obviously, back in Ten Hag's tenure. But tomorrow, really, you'd still expect United to beat Rangers with the quality. But the problem United have got at the moment is it's so inconsistent against the teams that you'd probably expect to beat. It's just so frustrating, and that it's quite hard to sort of delegate. I mean, people that have probably followed me on Twitter and stuff, they probably know I have a slight affiliation to Celtic as well. So this game means quite a lot to me. So for me, I really want to beat Rangers, but I just have absolutely no confidence in the side at the minute, and I think it's really important to make clear, don't put that on the manager whatsoever. I just think the club from top to bottom is a bit of a mess at the moment. The culture is so toxic, the way the owners are going about things is so wrong. The fan base just seems to just be so angry all the time at the moment, and rightly so for what's going on. So it could be a bit of a famous result for Rangers tomorrow, I think, and I think Rangers will be, albeit they've probably not been in the best form recently, I think they'll sniff the danger and think maybe we could come away from Old Trafford with something here.
Yeah, but it's one of those, I think there's a lot of synergy, I think, between both clubs at the moment in terms of structural disorganisation, managers in and out, no real kind of clear line of thinking from top to bottom. And I think taking over from Sir Alex, it was always going to be a big job, but United have never really managed to kind of stick at a manager project now for a number of years, and this kind of constant cycle of kind of change and bringing in players that suit one particular manager's style, but then when that manager goes, you're then left with a ton of people that don't necessarily fit where the next one goes. And we've certainly seen a lot of that at Rangers over the course of the last kind of couple of years as well, kind of since Steven Gerrard left and went down to Aston Villa. Michael Beale certainly didn't work following on from Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, who managed to get us to Europa League final just a few years back. And Philippe Clement, for all his kind of detractors, has managed to be able to do quite well in the Europa League this year, and that's certainly been the high point of what's been a fairly low season domestically. Wins against the likes of Nice, a draw at home against Tottenham, or a draw against Olympiacos away, who are a good side at this level. So I kind of punched consistently above our weight in this competition now for a number of years, and I think from a United perspective, it's not where you want to be. You obviously want to be in the Champions League, and it's difficult, I think, to be able to maybe raise yourself for slightly lower level attractive fixtures. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could look at it that way, but I think from a professional point of view, you should never really look at a game of football that way. I think you should always go with the mindset that no game's ever won. And I think that's probably a bit of a mindset that maybe United players over the years have probably thought without actually having the merit to do so. Look, Rangers are a huge club. an absolute massive club. And I mean, look, Scotland have obviously got Celtic and Rangers, but they are absolutely huge clubs, massive clubs around the world, massively followed, massively loved, many trophies, both with European pedigrees. And yes, you can look at it and go, oh, well, it's the Scottish League. It may not be as strong as the Premier League. But I hate to say it, but United would probably struggle in many leagues at the minute with the way they're playing. And to be honest, with the stature of Rangers and with them coming, they will try and go for a result tomorrow, knowing the inconsistency and uncertainty around Man United at the minute. Rangers will go for it, and I'd like to think that the mentality, or the mentality that the manager will instill in them is, you need to play every game as if it's your last, because none of these players at the minute deserve to be playing for Man United, bar obviously a small minority. So quite frankly, I think the idea that it's this lesser opposition, lesser competition, quite frankly, United don't deserve to be in the conversation with the bigger clubs and the bigger competitions at the minute, because they simply don't deserve to be. And these are the kind of games where, look, the Europa League's one of our chances of a trophy this season. You know, I know we're still in the FA Cup, we're in the Europa League. And you could probably say United are a bit more of a cup team at the moment with recent years under Ten Hag, but we still want to win things. And I think the Europa League is a good chance for that. But we're going to come up. I mean, it's like I say, I've got the table up here. Rangers are 8th, we're 7th. This game potentially tomorrow it's the penultimate game of the group stage. This game could potentially put someone in the next round without having to play the last 30. Is it the last 24 or something? Because it's
so obviously top 8 will bypass the playoff round and go straight to the round of 16. So if you manage to finish in the top 8, then that is massive. There's also some coefficient bonus points as well, which I think from an English perspective means slightly less because your coefficient's absolutely fine. But from Scotland, we are in a massive fight at the moment with countries that are obviously a much lesser in terms of being able to get into. Look, we're currently 14th in that coefficient table. Only the top 11 are guaranteed spots in the Champions League, for example, for both the top two. So being 14th is a massive issue from a Scotland perspective, because if Rangers do finish second in the league, which is looking massively likely given the fact that we're 15 points behind at the moment, you're looking at having to play 3 qualifiers to even get into the conversation for Champions League for next season, which is very difficult to be able to get through 3 qualifying rounds. When you're not going to be seeded, you're going to be up against teams that are probably slightly better than you. Obviously, we got knocked out by Dynamo Kiev this year, which was a game that Rangers should have won, but we didn't get through that one and found ourselves in the Europa League. So it's massive, I think, from a Rangers perspective to finish in that top 8, and a result down at Old Trafford on Thursday with a home game against Union Saint-Gilloise to finish the group gives you a right opportunity of getting in that top 8, being able to do it. So, as I say, bit of a free hit, because if it doesn't go well, you've got that Union Saint-Gilloise game to go, and then you've still got an opportunity potentially of sneaking into that top 8. But a result on Thursday absolutely probably cements that place.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's like you say about the coefficient. I mean, Celtic are doing okay in the Champions League. I think they're 21st at the moment. Obviously, the level on points with Real Madrid. So that I know from a rival perspective, you don't want to see that, but from a league perspective, you do want to see them do well, I imagine. Only so to speak, I suppose. But so it is massive for you. But the thing is, for Man United, is, just focusing on them for a second. United shouldn't be in a position where we're even questioning if we're going to get past that playoff round. United should have had this done and dusted, arguably, weeks and weeks ago, or game weeks ago, I should say. But the fact that we've just started so poorly, it means that still at this stage, we're having to play our strongest 11. We're having to make sure that we're getting the job done now, because, I mean, United's next Europa League game, I believe the major issue is, obviously, like say, your last game in the Europa League is against Union Saint-Gilloise or something to pronounce like. United are playing FCSB away. Our away form's been appalling in Europe for the past 2-3 years. So United need to win this game. Absolutely need to win. And with it being in front of our home fans, but Rangers will fancy themselves. And the point that we've got to make is, if United go into these last 2 Europa League games with a worry of even qualifying, it's almost an embarrassment that for for a club like United. The fact that they've not been able to get into the top 8 of a competition like the Europa League, no disrespect to it, but United should be, with the teams around them, they should be beating them, and they haven't done. And ultimately, it's just a sign of how things have fell over the last however many years, over the last decade or so. And it's kind of saddening to see, but because it was only 15, 20 years ago, Man United were facing Rangers in the Champions League, and it was a massive night at Ibrox and at Old Trafford. And it's just a shame that two giants like this aren't kind of going through the same thing as they did in yesteryears, I suppose.
Yep. We obviously saw Man United at close quarters in the summer with a pre-season friendly that was played at Murrayfield, albeit it was a very shadow Manchester United side that came up to Edinburgh to play that day, and there's a lot of Rangers players that played that day as well that are no longer with the club. But what that day did show was some of the kind of talented youngsters that United have got. Obviously, that game was played just after the kind of Euros had finished, and obviously a lot of your main players were still on holiday at that time. So very little to kind of read into that match. I think the goals scored that day were by Hannibal Mowbray, who's no longer with you, and another one of your kind of young strikers who's not really been anywhere near the first team that this season. But there's a lot of upheaval. Obviously, Marcus Rashford is a player who has been nowhere near the first team for the last kind of 10 games. You've got doubts at the moment over Garnacho's future. Chelsea and other Napoli, I think, have been very heavily linked with him. So I think for a side like United, you never always used to hear about players leaving unless it was their time was done. And you don't quite see that quite so much now, as you've got players who the manager has said that they maybe want to keep, but there's still talk of them kind of going elsewhere. And I think Garnacho's from the outside looks like he's a very talented player, but it kind of baffles me as to why they'd even entertain letting him go. Obviously, there's PSR reasons behind it, and there's obviously a lot of profit to be made on him if they were to sell him. But given who's getting you goals just now, Amad Diallo, who's been someone that we're aware of, that obviously was up at Rangers for a loan spell a couple of years ago, didn't really set the heather on fire up here at all, but is at the moment probably your most informed player.
Yeah, the weird thing with the Garnacho situation, and probably similar to the Rashford thing, is I'm so conflicted with it because I like Garnacho, but there has been questions about his attitude as well. I don't particularly want to get into the Rashford thing because it just ends up becoming a debate about something that has no factual basis around, I think. But there's been, and probably similar to Garnacho, I don't really like speaking about things like attitude. The one thing I will say is I thought it was a little bit appalling that Garnacho's agent was at the Chelsea game last night. I feel like they were trying to stoke put a bit of fuel on a fire that didn't need to be lit, to be honest. And I think it was a little bit naughty because if that was Rashford, he would have been absolutely lambasted for it. And I just find it a little bit double standards and hypocritical sometimes because people seem to play favourites with players at United, and it really annoys me because it always tends to be Rashford or Garnacho or Mainu or whoever from the academy who gets the pelters. Look, I think Garnacho is potentially looking at being sold because, one, United are skint because of the Glazer family, because of what they've done over the past however long. And we are not quite on the cusp, but we are a little bit limited with PSR rules. And a massive help would be selling an academy graduate for pretty much full profit. I think if we got 60 million, it's pretty much all pure profit that we could put on the books, which would be a massive help. I think ultimately as well, the fact that Garnacho is an out-and-out left winger or sometimes plays on the right, but I think he does his best on the left. The problem is we don't play with wingers anymore. Amorim is very widely known to play 3 at the back. He likes his wing backs and he likes 2 number 10s in behind the striker. And he likes a strong centre forward who likes to bring in the 10s to effectively just get everybody else forward with the wing backs. The problem is United don't have anybody really in their squad at the moment who can play to that. And you then add the situation of Ineos allowing Ten Hag to continue for 2, 3, 4, 5 months longer than he should have done. And then signed players in Ten Hag's image. I thought this was supposed to be a new structure that was supposed to help massively in football terms. and it just seems like maybe they don't have a clue what they're doing either. So from a footballing perspective, I sort of understand why they get they might be looking at selling Rashford and Garnacho, because they don't fit the new football system that Amorim and the manager that they've hired wants to play. However, like I said before, I'm a little bit conflicted because Garnacho is only 20 years old. Can he not be moulded in an image that allows him to play this new system? Or is there better out there that will play it quicker than it'll take for him to adapt to said system? So there's plenty to ask, and there's questions there. I think it's a little bit sad that we're having to sell academy graduates for pure profit because of the situation financially we're in. Don't particularly think don't think it shows a great look for United.
They've always been known as a team that brings players through, and I think if you look at, there's again a bit of synergy with Rangers in terms of the amount of money that's been wasted in the transfer market, obviously on different levels. But if you think of players like Anthony, De Ligt, Casemiro, all players that have come in for big money, big wages that really haven't really delivered terribly much. And we've had similar issues like Cyril Dessers, who's likely to be on the bench on Thursday night. Has came in, a 29-year-old player who scored some goals, but not been a massive success, and potentially he's looking at potentially going out during this window as well. But there's been an awful lot of money wasted from a Rangers perspective when we don't have an awful lot of money to spend. And I think that's, again, where there's some comparisons been drawn between United and Rangers at the moment as big clubs that aren't really spending money correctly. And that then hampers you because you're then having to sell on promising players to do that. And one of the people that's potentially going to do that is Hamzy Gaman, who's came in this summer from Rangers, scored 11 goals so far, only really started being involved since November. But he's one that you've obviously got the Moroccan fullback, Mazraoui, who's been talking about Gaman in the build up to the game, and he's likely to be on the radar for the Moroccan national side. And he's going to play on Thursday night that the United defence is going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. I think, look, the problem United have got at the minute is it just doesn't seem to be like the case that anyone's performing, bar probably Ahmad. I think the striker situation is worrying. I think the fact that we've got defenders that, and somebody actually pointed this out to me not that long ago, but the entire back line and the goalkeeper is a former Ajax back line and goalkeeper. I think it massively shows that Ten Hag either had way too much influence in the transfer market, or the players that he signed weren't good enough. I mean, you obviously mentioned some of the players there. De Ligt, I think, is brilliant. I think he's a very, very good centre-back. I don't personally think he's a long-term centre-back for Amorim. I think Amorim likes his players at the back of the field to be a bit more on the comfortable on the ball. And De Ligt doesn't. Maybe it'll be something that improves. I don't know, but he doesn't show me that he is. I don't think that's a criticism of him. I think he knows what he. The thing is, he's a very good defender. He's just not. He's not one of those that's very comfortable on the ball. I'd probably say fairly similar to Maguire. I think Yoro, with his inexperience, but a very young and talented centre back. But he's going to take time to adapt to the Premier League, especially. We saw that against Southampton the other day. I thought, I can't remember his name, was it Sulemana at Southampton? I thought he really did get the better of Yoro against him. Martinez has just been bang out of form this season. I don't know what's happened to him. I think it's just a collection of the fact that there's no confidence in the team. A lot of toxicity is probably seeping down from the top, from the fan base. Højlund is just... There's not been a lot of service for Højlund, and at times I do really feel for him because I think there could be a lot more for him available. I also do find myself shouting at the TV and shouting in the stadium going, go and get the ball and ignore the man behind you. Stop wrestling him and go to the ball, which I think is probably a big criticism of him. I have other criticisms of Højlund outside the football pitch, but I'll leave them. I'll ignore those. I mean, Anthony, I could speak for about 4 days about him. I'll be honest. It's not his fault that he was signed for the fee he was. But I genuinely don't think it's unfair to say he could go down as our worst ever signing and arguably our worst ever player because of the level of the transfer fee. I just think he has not worked from the start and he's been just woeful, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just a weird one. I think there is many comparisons you probably can make to Rangers, and it's a shame for me as a United fan that we're sat here in 12th place, 13th place, wherever we are, and it's exactly where we deserve to be. But
Yeah, I think one thing looking from the outside at United this season is that actually the big games, like games against Liverpool, City, Arsenal, you've actually been not too bad in them. It's been games against other teams in the league, and you saw that at the weekend, losing 3-1 to a Brighton side who themselves have been fairly inconsistent, but have got a bit of pace about them. And I think that's the one thing that I've certainly seen from United is they've kind of struggled with clever movement.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I got the table up here, and Man United would be in a relegation battle if it wasn't for Amad Diallo. We just would be. Like, his performances have probably dragged us out every now and then. But you made the point there of the Arsenal-Liverpool games. Oh, yeah, we did really well. Those games you're probably going to perform slightly better in just because those teams are going to go for you. They're going to try and win the game. They're going to exploit you a lot more or try to exploit you a lot more. The likes of playing Southampton, who are arguably... they're probably not arguably. They currently are the worst team in Premier League history. No team has got points as less as this than Southampton. And make no mistake, that first 80 minutes against them the other night was probably the worst I think I've ever seen Manchester United play. It was absolutely dreadful. It was embarrassing in that stadium. And I think I think the fans were just so like, what in the world are we watching? Because after the Arsenal-Liverpool games, I said on the radio that United should be realistically beating Southampton a minimum of 3-0. And for the first 80 minutes, it looked like Southampton were going to beat us 3-0. It was absolutely appalling. And we're currently sat 10 points above the relegation zone on 26 points. And I personally think we're not closer to the relegation zone because of how poor Southampton, Leicester and Ipswich have been, and arguably Wolves to an extent, and Everton. I mean, Man United and Tottenham are where they are right now because they deserve to be. It's not a case of, we've just underperformed XG or all these statistics you want to pull out. Man United, arguably, if they carry on like this, they will be very slowly dragged into a battle that they don't want to be in. And I think this season, United need to get to 35 to 40 points. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but they need to get to 35 to 40 points and go, do you know what? Right, we've not got relegated. Let's literally over the next few months now, let's try and hit 40 points in March. And from March to the following August, where we start a new season, do absolutely everything they can to implement this new structure, implement the new philosophy that Amorim wants to implement. They need to get rid of all the players that don't deserve to be there or don't want to be there or should never put a United shirt on again. And they need to back him with players that he deserves to be backed with, because he originally wanted to come in the summer because he probably realised that the players that we had were so not for his system. United have got the most imbalanced squad in the league. I don't care what anybody says. You won't be able to play this system with players that are so used to playing 4 at the back with 3 midfielders or a pivot with Ollie or whatever. They're just not going to be able to. And I find it bizarre, but it's just the way it is in modern football because of how many systems there are. But United need to get to a point of safety at this point and then focus on what next. And I think after we've done that, there needs to be a lot of work on, right, who from the academy can we embed into the squad? Who in the squad just isn't going to be here? And we need to start just being ruthless because this squad isn't good enough. The players aren't good enough. The management above Amorim, clearly not good enough at the moment. I think the problem is finding the feet, and I think the toxicity of the decisions Ineos are making is without doubt seeping into the dressing room because stewards are losing the jobs, people were made redundant, bonuses were removed. It's just awful. Club ambassadors are being removed or decreased in pay. Ferguson lost his ambassadorial thing, which I think was made into bigger what it was. But there's just so much bad noise around the club. There just doesn't seem to be anything positive and any positive publicity about the club at the minute. And it's, for so many years, we were crying out for it. We thought it was going to come with Ineos. And look, they'll never be as bad as the Glazers. It would take a lot for them to be as bad as the Glazers because we're in this mess because of them. But if they're not careful, and to be honest, they've probably lost all patience and trust from the fans already because of the decisions. But if they're not careful, they're not going to be able to get it back.
Yeah, a couple of quick points just before I kind of let you go. Goalkeeper for United, obviously Onana at the weekend wasn't great. Culpable for Brighton's third goal. Talk of the reserve keeper, the Turkish boy, playing on Thursday night. Is that something you would support?
Onana is someone that really conflicts me because he's clearly very good. I think he's just got a moment in his brain that just switches off, and I think the mistakes as a goalkeeper are very amplified because you're the sole goalkeeper. I think the mistakes as Manchester United goalkeeper are even more amplified because of who you are, where you are, and the position you're in. The problem is with Onana is it's obvious that he's a very good goalkeeper and he's kept us in so many games with some of his brilliant saves, and he's good at passing the ball and good at distributing it. But I feel like because of the position we are in the league, the mistakes he makes are just so bizarre. Like they're just like it is literally like someone turned his brain off for a split second. Like that one against Brighton the other day was just, I don't know another keeper that does that. And I've been really outspoken about him on Twitter and said, look, if you don't think this keeper's good, I'd be curious as to why so much. Because yes, he makes mistakes, but he is a very good keeper. And he's making me look a bit of a fool at the minute with these mistakes because the other day I just found myself just going, oh my God, what in the world did he just do? Like, it was just a simple collection of the ball and he just, So to answer your question, I wouldn't be surprised if he put Bayern in. I think the thing is as well, Bayern was so decent against Arsenal. He obviously made a few errors, but not errors, but I think he was shaky for a little bit. But the problem for Onana is if Bayern does get the chance and does perform how he probably did against Arsenal, you'd have expected that to have lit up a fire for Onana and gone, right, I really need to perform because look at how well that goalkeeper did. And he just didn't. And then a week later, he made these mistakes against Brighton. 3-1 at home against Brighton. I think we've won once. I don't think we've beaten Brighton at home for about 5 years or something like that. It's shocking. So I think support it would be the wrong word. I think understand it would be a better one. I'd support Bayern or Onana being in, but I'd understand if Onana was dropped because the howler he made was just, like I say, I don't think I've ever seen another goalkeeper do something like that. It was literally just like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Central midfield obviously is going to be a big battle on Thursday night. Rangers obviously have got Mohamed Diamande suspended, so it's likely it'll be Conor Barron alongside Nico Rashkin in the heart of the Rangers midfield on Thursday night. United's central midfielder partnership all season has been, particularly since Amorim came in, has been under quite a bit of pressure. I think given the fact the likes of Casemiro and Eriksen are not the most mobile anymore. Obviously, Mason Mount's injury problems haven't helped in that area as well. So, Kobe Mainu, a player who had a very good season last year, probably hasn't hit the heights this year. And Bruno Fernandes, an incredibly talented player, but again, someone who from the outside looks as if he can be quite frustrating. How do you see United lining up in the midfield on Thursday?
I think they line up with exactly the first three you probably said. I think they start with Mainu, Ugarte, and Fernandes. Fernandes will play without a doubt. He always does. And I won't ever have Bruno slander. So I think the problem with Mainu this season is he's probably been he's been unfortunately a person who has suffered from squad imbalance. And probably the fact that there's just so much uncertainty around everything with the club. I think he needs stability. He's a young. I think what people need to remember is some of these young lads, like Mainu, probably Garnacho as well, but Mainu only came into the squad pretty much last season, and he's going to need stability. He's going to need help. He's going to need experienced leaders around him to help him. He's a young player, and young players are going to have bad games. They're going to have form patches that aren't great. And I think a lot of people with Ugarte probably have misprofiled him. Ugarte is a guy who, when he doesn't have the ball, he'll do absolutely bleeding everything to get it back. And then he'll give it to somebody else who's better on the ball. And I think a lot of people, because of how bad Casemiro was last season, they saw him as a bit of a saviour for the number 6 role, and he was going to absolutely revolutionise and transform Man United's midfield. That was never Ugarte, and it was never, ever going to be his job. I think a lot of fans misprofiled him to be that when he was just never going to be that. I think Ugarte is unreal. I love him to death at the job that he's good at, and I think Amorim is actually starting to use him in a way that allows him to show his strengths, whereas Ten Hag just didn't, I don't think. So I think it will be those three. And I think once the club becomes more stable and once there is more certainty around everything else that's going on, and there's better players that suit Amorim's system and things like that, I think we will see that midfield gel better. I think Mainu will get back to how he was. Because Mainu, I don't think, has been bad this year. He's just not been the new beacon of light that he was last year, because he was this new player from the academy who's just taken to the pitch so brilliantly. So I haven't got any qualms with Mainu. I haven't got any qualms with Bruno, to be honest. I think Bruno's probably... I'd love to know where Man United would be without Bruno over these last 2 years. I think Bruno's probably the only player currently at United who could have fit in a Ferguson side. And I think he's frustrating, but risk takers are frustrating. Of course, they're gonna be. They want to take those risks. They want to kind of make things happen, and Bruno is the player that does that. So I think that'll be the midfield. I think it'll be them three. Maybe we might see Eriksen a bit later on, but I think that because it's a must-win game, he'll have to play his best three midfielders, which I think are those three.
One lad too I was quite impressed with in the game in the summer, albeit it's pre-season friendly, you can't read too much into it, was Toby Collier. He looked as if a player that looked as if he had quite a bit about him, but he's not quite involved at all. He's not made the jump into playing a lot of games. I've seen he's obviously been on the bench quite a bit, but not really getting that many shirts.
Yeah, well, he came on against Arsenal, and in a game like that, was it Arsenal? I think it was. He came on and just took to it perfectly, and I think it showed a massive maturity in him, which was brilliant. I think one thing Amorim's doing, and he's probably doing it alongside with Yoro, is these young players shouldn't be thrown in. I think we've seen it with Elanga the other year. He probably was thrown in at a time when it was so uncertain, and it kind of ended up being a detriment to him. We've got to be careful with these young academy players. So with the likes of Collier, Yoro as well, I know he's not an academy player, but he's a young player. We've got to be careful with them. We've got to protect them to an extent. And same with Mainu. So I actually forgot about Collier. I actually think Collier could play over Ugarte. I actually think that could happen. I think he'll either play Ugarte for 60 minutes and then Collier will come on, or vice versa, and then Ugarte will come on at 60 minutes. Because if he's coming on, if he's trusting him against Arsenal in an FA Cup third round game, in one of our only opportunities of a trophy, I think he will now slowly start to embed him into the team, probably similar to how Mainu started coming into the side. Albeit I know it's a different manager, but I definitely think Collier we will start to see a lot more of, because let's face it, the first team aren't doing great. So I think as the season goes on, we, like I say, once we get to 35, 40 points, there's nothing to play for in the league. I think we will start to see a couple more academy graduates, probably like Kukonki, the centre back as well. I think we might see him at some stage soon. Brilliant.
Big thank you to Callum for joining us on this one. Anyone that's watched that isn't familiar with where to find you, Callum, where can they get you?
So, I mean, at the moment, the probably best off just adding me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. I did start a YouTube channel, the United Road _ there is another version of that channel, which I think people are probably starting to realise, ran by some, I think it's based in India. So, which is why I put the little underscore, because I think that's what you have to type to find me. I'll be honest, I've not uploaded a lot because United have just been so horrible to speak about. It's just not made me want to. Because I, unlike others, don't like thriving off negativity for views. So, but anyway, we'll leave that. But yeah, so you're probably best off getting me on Twitter at _Callum Stone. Follow me on there. When I do upload, you will see it on that. And I will probably link it, so that will be your best way of finding me. But yeah, pleasure to come on. Always nice to help and talk about football and United, even though we aren't doing very well. But yeah.
That's what we're all here for. It's what they put us through as fans. Full coverage of Thursday night's match will be over on our Patreon channel. It's patreon.com/the4thofficial on Thursday. And then on Friday, the usual European roundup, looking at everything Europa League and Champions League, will be with you as well. Big thank you to everyone for watching. I'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.